Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. We are the Fantasy Formula, and we're live ahead of qualifying for the Barcelona-Catalunya Grand Prix. And Terry, you're back in the hot seat. How was Monaco?
It was amazing. It was an absolute, just one of those experiences you just can't write about. Do you know what I mean? It's ticked off a bucket list. The race itself was a little bit boring until the midway point, I'm not going to lie. But, well, it's had some repercussions now, hasn't it? That's for sure.
It was an interesting race all the way through and a lot of turmoil after the race that we're going to break down in this hour. Make sure you answer the poll because the big question this week is around Pierre Gasly getting that P3 reinstated and what the implications will be in F1 fantasy. So we want to know, are you running Gasly this week on the promise that he'll gain some budget as the F1 fantasy devs correct the game next week? So I want to hear what your thoughts are on that. While we wait for those poll results to come in, let's bring up the classification from FP3 and break down what we saw in the last hour of practice. You can see here Mercedes back on top with George Russell. Good to see him back in form after an off week in Monaco. And it was the McLarens jumping over the Ferraris. And we're starting to get some signs here, Terry, that McLaren are bringing back this tire management excellence that we saw in their championship winning season last year. From your perspective, is it enough for them to contend for a win this week?
Definitely podiums. I still think Mercedes are the favourite. I think George is driving really well, but I think, like you say, I feel that McLaren have jumped above Ferrari, even though Ferrari got all these upgrades, because as we know, Ferrari brought a lot, but McLaren seem on it. It's a track that suits them well. We know that last year they ran really well around here. It feels like they've got something this weekend. Whether or not it's enough to take the fight all the way to the win, I'm not entirely sure. But I kind of feel they're definitely going to be in the podium places, and I feel they're above Ferrari from what we've seen. I've not seen enough from Ferrari. We know Charles, we're probably going to come on site, has got different brakes, etc., etc. We know they brought all these updates. I think there was 8 in total that they brought. So they've got a lot going on in that car, but it doesn't feel like it's enough to bridge that gap between what Mercedes have got and then what McLaren have got.
Let me ask you another question about McLaren, because they broke curfew last night and the press release they put out looked like word soup, but it was basically around improving reliability on both cars so they have a good chance of finishing the race tomorrow. Was there anything you saw out of those measures? Is it that McLaren are worried or that they're making absolutely sure that both cars finish the race?
I think absolutely sure. We know they've been hit by reliability problems. We know they've had problems. So it felt like a really long-winded statement to just say they changed some things on the car outside the curfew, if I'm honest. It didn't feel like, if you look at the power units and stuff, if you look at Lando, he's really close to the limit, which makes me wonder if they're redoing some things with that, if they're changing some things with that. Because remember, you can use one of your existing pool and not take a penalty. So I wonder if there's a bit of swapping going on with electrical stalls and stuff like that, because Lando is right on the borderline. So I do wonder if after free practice, they've kind of gone, we're going to put something else in, put one of the pool ones in, not take a penalty, but make a swap that way. It feels like it might be related to that side more than, sort of there's a problem with it. It's a standard thing. Obviously, if you break curfew, then it's one of those things nowadays. It's not a big deal breaking curfew. It's more of a procedural thing that says they were there working late on the car. So, I think you got, 3 jokers in the season you can use. So it's not a big issue at all, really.
It's starting to make me feel okay about McLaren reliability. I know people moving that second constructor to McLaren, there's a little bit of unease because Lando has 3 races finished, 3 races not finished on the season. So that's reason to be worried. But I think McLaren are taking the step forward this week. As we move down the FP3 classification, you see Kimi Antonelli P7. This isn't that Kimi's 7th on the road here. He was running at the top with the leaders the whole hour. And then as those front runners were fitting the sauce for that last flyer at the end of the session, Mercedes held Kimi back a little bit, started his flyer late, and then he went straight into traffic in the first sector. So he aborted that lap because on this circuit, you really only have enough tire life to warm them up and have 1 flyer. So once it was aborted, he couldn't get a flyer in at the end of the session. So I think Kimi slots in much closer to the top 3 than where he is down in P7 between the Red Bulls.
Yeah, definitely. I don't see anything that worries me about Kimi. The only thing I think that's kind of at the back of my mind at the moment for qualifying, more importantly, track limit seems to be a big issue still in Barcelona. We're seeing a lot of deleted laps. I think there was about 20 minutes in the broadcast, they were saying that Pierre Gasly hadn't actually set a lap and he had. It had just been deleted. And we've seen quite a few track deletions in practice already. So that's something to bear in mind for the actual race itself, I suppose, for penalties potentially coming drivers' way, and also qualifying for missing out on a potential Q3 or something because of a deleted lap time. So something to just bear at the back of mind. Whether or not it'll make a big difference, I don't know, to be honest. We know that once they know where, it tends to be certain corners, once they know where they are, the drivers will tend to adjust accordingly to try and make sure that something happens and get that bank happen early. But it is kind of on there with regards to at the back of your mind still.
I'm definitely worried about qualifying because they said throughout the broadcast that you have just enough time to warm up the tires and have that one lap. If it doesn't go well, you then have to get new tires and try again. You only have so many bites at the apple throughout the 3 stages of qualifying to do that. So we could see some qualifying out of position, having to make up places in the Grand Prix. This is a track where you can make up places. This isn't Monaco, so I'm not terribly turned off by that, but it could put Final Fix in the mix. It could really throw off some scores that we were expecting to be higher or lower. So very, very interesting session coming up at the top of the hour.
Yeah, and especially with tyres. We saw Max going on hard tyre yesterday, really struggling. Tyre deg's going to be a really big factor this weekend. We're seeing track temperatures of 50 degrees. Obviously, Barcelona is later on than what it normally is. It is scorching out there. We haven't had a single temperature which is below 50 degrees in terms of what they're seeing on track. So that's going to affect it. We know that Pirelli adjusted the PSI by 1 this morning as well. So that's obviously in sort of response to what they've seen so far. It is lending itself to a 2-stop race, if I'm honest, from what we're seeing. Those tyres don't look like they're going to hold on. Like I say, I don't think you can do 2 laps on the soft tyres in qualifying. I don't think you've got the tyres for it. They seem to be burning through them. In fact, I think they're struggling to do a complete flat-out full lap with these soft tyres from what we're seeing. They seem to, if you start off too aggressively, you lose it in the middle. So it seems to be a bit of balanced laps anyway. So I really don't see where we could have like in Monaco where you can do that cool down and go again. I don't think the tyres are for it. And I think tyre wear is going to be a big issue with what you got left. Max is obviously on 1 set of hards now because he used the set before. Obviously, that's going to play a factor. We know going into Q3, you potentially, who's got a new set left in Q3 could also play a big factor as well. So lots to look at from that point of view as well compared to normal.
Team struggling with tires up and down the grid. I think it's going to play a big factor throughout the weekend. Now, this is the time of the show where I ask you to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Let's get those likes up. I've locked in a lineup that I could easily pivot from in the next 20 minutes or so. So do make sure you hit that like button so I can show you what I'm thinking about right now. And I'm going to immediately address the question in everybody's mind about what is up with Pierre Gasly. So hit that like button while I go on a little bit of a rant. All right. So on the F1 Fantasy game, you see this information box. The F1 Fantasy is going to review all of Monaco points and price updates after this weekend in Barcelona. That doesn't tell us a whole lot about how they're going to do it and what the implications are. But we know this. We know Gasly lost 0.6 million last week, but with his corrected score is due to gain 0.2 million. So some people are bringing on Pierre Gasly this week with the expectation that the game could just bless us with 0.8 million in between Barcelona and Austria. But will that happen? Are we entitled to that? Because if you think about teams like Terry and mine, we didn't have Gasly last week. We weren't beholden to that 0.8 million delta. We're going to get Gasly 0.8 million cheaper this week. And then we expect the game to give us an extra 0.8 million on the other side. So I don't think that's necessarily the fairest way to approach it. But the game does surprise us. They did say they are looking to make price adjustments. So it's on the table now. So when we look at some of the sims, Ryder's done a great job of breaking down many different scenarios so we can compare what we think is most likely to happen. But for me, Terry, I think it's less than 50-50 that Gasly just gets added on 0.8 million sometime next week.
And we're also assuming Gasly is going to keep P3.
That's right. You still have McLaren and Red Bull up in arms about the whole thing.
Let's talk about the whole appeal here, because this whole appeal process, I've done a couple of videos on this, is a quick mess, and I won't go too much into it. But basically, McLaren and Red Bull have cited the reasons why they believe that Gasly shouldn't have got his P3 back. And they're now using the FIA's new ruling as a 96-hour window to lodge an appeal or potentially lodge an appeal. They've given a notice of intention, which basically tells the FIA, we're looking at it. They haven't formally lodged one yet. The problem you're going to have is 2 teams are going to go for this, if I'm being honest. So you've got double whammy here. And we've also got Mercedes look at legal action. So ultimately, we're now going to have a situation where everyone could be bringing in Gasly on the basis the FIA made this ruling. What if come Monday, come tomorrow or even today, that McLaren and Red Bull hit that appeal button and it gets reversed again? There is going to be a massive amount of problems with this. And I feel, for me, they've done what they did with reinstating Pierre, and don't get me wrong, there's all these bits. But then you've got to look at what happened to Isaac, everybody else, people who served the penalties. There's a lot of political undercurrents to this where you've got Formula One management have admitted they made a mistake with the whole of the pit lane timing. So we're not talking about one driver, 2 drivers. We're talking every single pit lane penalty was potentially wrong. So you've either got to go, actually, they've been served, that's it, it's a fault, we've learned from it, move on. and keep the race result as it was with Isaac and P3. Or if you go to Pierre, you open that can of worms. And to be honest, I don't think either way is a good way, because you've got something that's fundamentally broken down and something which potentially is an absolute nightmare for the FIA and Formula One. And bear in mind, this is Formula One management. This isn't the FIA. This is the FIA get their timing data from Formula One management. So the FIA have been getting a lot of flack for this, but to be honest, they can only go with what's on their screen, and that's been given to them by Formula One management. It's Formula One management and timing screens that messed up, not so much the FIA. So I kind of feel a bit sorry for the FIA in a funny sort of way. They've only been acting on what the information told them, and essentially that information is wrong. But I think it's a gamble. I think there's some fairness in the game here, where, like you say, we've had a race result, we've had a classified, we've gone through it, we've gone into another race. Unfortunately, we're in a back-to-back, which makes it a lot more difficult for the game, if I'm honest. But then, like you say, I think either with this, where's the fairness in all this as well? Because you can argue either way, can't you? Like you said, you can argue the doubtful teams who haven't got him in, but then you can also argue the people who've got it in. And again, I think it's the same decision as a race result. You're going to end up with losers on one side, depending on what they do.
That's really well said, Terry. I think it is going to be a lot like the race, where someone's going to be hard done, someone's going to get lucky.
Yep.
And now it's just a matter for picking our lineups this week. Which side of the fence are you on?
And it reminds me of that transfer, wasn't it? Was it Logan Sargent with that transfer we had a couple
yes.
where
absolutely.
Literally, yeah, it reminds me of that situation where people just got lucky because they had him in their team and they hadn't obviously sorted the transfer out and all the other bits. So it kind of reminds me of that situation off the top of my head.
The Logan Sargent loophole. It still looms large over this.
Still hurts. Should we do some questions? There's loads of questions, Adam. Should we do some questions?
Absolutely. And Terry, while we were ranting about Gasly, we have a new channel member. It's Autobahn F1, who is gifted a subscription by our friend Race Maven. So thank you both.
Wow.
And welcome, Autobahn.
Can someone give me a subscription?
Right on topic, Rick has a question here about what if Gasly has a bad race tomorrow? And I think that's totally in the cards, because he ran like absolute garbage yesterday. Alpine also broke curfew last night, gave him an entirely new chassis. He spent most of FP3 not posting representative lap times, so he's going off track. So I think he's still struggling with grip. He posted a decent lap time at the end of FP3 that got him, where did that get him? 13? Yeah, 13th.
Yeah.
So on paper, it looks like he finished the session well, but he was struggling all the way through. So I don't think Gasly as a top driver this week is that likely. But if they reinstate that score, he'd be up in the 20s, low price gain targets for Austria. There is some hope for Gasly to return some value. So
there is, but I'm not seeing a lot in Alpine. Like you say, I'm not seeing a lot, which fills me with confidence. They both complained about surf. They've been really strong up until now. But again, I feel there's teams above them. I feel you've got the Mercedes, the McLarens, the Ferraris, potentially the Red Bulls as well. So I feel there's a lot above them. The Racing Bulls coming into the mix as well. So I'm not entirely convinced that they've got enough in them to get a really good result, going back to Rick's point about a storming performance here from them. Maybe reliability will play a part. I don't know. It kind of feels with temperatures of 50 degrees, those engines are going to take a bit of a battering. We haven't had the warm Middle East tracks, have we? So we haven't had the Saudi and Bahrain where these cars run at quite high temperatures. So that might be a factor that we haven't kind of thought of. Everyone towards the back end of their sort of engine allowance, like I said, Lando and those sort of things were round 7 now. So these engines being through the mill on some of them as well. So again, it's in there, but I think it's to the risk with the Alpines at the moment. I think it's a risk trying to guess what they're going to do with Gasly. I think that just feels like it's a risk on that point of view. But for me, I think there's more above that, and I don't feel the need to bring somebody in just on the basis of what the game may do. If I knew what they were going to do, I would, but I feel it's a bit of a wrong move. Someone's gifted like loads of membership here.
Race Maven has turned into Oprah. You get a membership. You get a membership. So let me rattle this off real fast. We have Pazarazzi, Sleepy Vapor, Pax Magellanic, Troy Lawrence, and Dynamics Aviation. All new members in the last 2 minutes, thanks to the wonderful gifts of Race Maven. So thank you so much, Race Maven, and welcome to our 5 new members.
Race Maven's turned into the FIA, just giving out memberships instead of penalties left, right, and centre.
So right. we have a new sim, and Ryder, bless his heart, he has done a whole lot of work here to try to sort out the different possibilities with Pierre Gasly. So there are 5 post FP3 sims. I might need a hot minute to figure out what exactly the differences
Do
between
you want to do a hot minute? Shall I do some questions?
Yes, you run through some questions. I'm going to dig this out of the Discord.
It's a strategy to bring in Gasly. Hopefully, Adam will be able to answer that one once he's looking at his Discord and his page, to be honest. I personally haven't. As Adam said, I didn't have Gasly in, and I didn't want to make a move for a -10 to bring Gasly in and do that, which potentially I would have had to have done because of the price he is. So to bring Gasly in, I would have had to make 2 or 3 moves, and it kind of felt like, for me personally, I just haven't. And I'm also still a bit dubious about where they're gonna keep Pierre's win on that point of view. So yeah, with that in mind, there's that one. Hadja is well, it's an interesting one because Hadja's probably going better than Pierre around Barcelona, to be honest. Very close to Max from what we've seen so far, not too far off, and actually performing quite well. Obviously got the confidence at that podium. I know potentially he's been taken away, but had a really good weekend in Monaco. Looks like he's having a better weekend this weekend as well. So Hadja's definitely won on that point of view.
Yeah, on Hadjar, good for points this week. Probably the worst long-term hold between him and Gasly because the points are going to correct. Hadjar's targets will go up for Austria. Gasly's will go down. So it just sort of depends on what you're looking for. Short-term points, I'd say Hadjar this week. Long-term value, you have Gasly with the lower targets next week. And I would say less than a 50-50 chance, but still a chance of getting that 0.8 million in the off week. And this is the essence of these many post FP3 sims. Let me read this off to you. So A is assuming $0 change and that they keep Gasly's old points. Doesn't seem like that's terribly possible. Option B is they give Gasly the 0.8 million and price changes this week are based off of his previous point total. So it's not assuming he gets P3. Price changes this week will be based off of him finishing P7. Sim C is that they don't give Gasly any adjustment for Monaco, but his P3 finish is reflected in how they do the price changes for Barcelona. Option D is they give him the 0.8 million and they base the Barcelona price changes based off of that P3 finish. And option E is a hedge where Gasly gains 0.4 million, which is literally an average of 0 and 0.8. It's not a real outcome. It's just an average of 2 outcomes. And they give half of the new points. Like they split in half his old score and his new score. So I think what he's doing there, those aren't real outcomes, but it's an average of 2 likely outcomes if you want to see what playing down the middle looks like.
Right.
That was a mouthful to say. Let's come over to the budget builder and see what that plays out for Gasly.
But again, there's no precedent for this. I mean, what's to say they ain't just going to correct the points and leave the budget the same? There is literally 0 in the rule, 0 in there, isn't there? So everyone is, like you say, I don't feel that makes it more complicated to try and bring. I think it's one of those. If you've got Pierre in your team, do you know what? You might be better keeping him. If you're trying to be tactical and bring Pierre in, I kind of worry that you're going to get absolutely sort of screwed over by whatever they decide to do. That's what I feel like personally. Looking at all of those scenarios, it kind of feels like if you've got him, you might get lucky. If you haven't got him and you try to bring him in, it feels like it's going to get messy, if I'm honest.
Let's see, we got some questions lining up in the chat.
Yeah.
Oh, questions about final fix. I've seen a lot of this. If Oscar Orlando get pole, we start Antonelli as our 2x boost. Is it worth the final fix? So last week at Monaco, a place where this overtaking is so hard to come by, I said if Antonelli was P4 or lower and Leclerc was on pole, it would be worth the final fix switch because there's so little room for overtaking after the start finish straight.
Yep.
But in this race, because there's an opportunity, if Antonelli has a bad lap, he could make some overtakes, get a fastest lap, and then get himself back in the mix. I would guess if he's P6, maybe even P5, I'd say at least for now, P6 or lower, and Lando or Oscar are on pole, a final fix makes sense. But I think the gap, Antonelli would have to finish much lower than what I would have used final fix for in Monaco.
Yeah, and going back to the pole and tyre strategies, we got 69% stay 2-stop, 33 plus, and obviously 1% win. So I think also you got to add that into the mix as well. There's going to be an undercut here of some sort. It is most likely going to be a 2-stop race. They've gone with a step soft on the compounds to make it a 2-stop race as well. So I kind of think there's enough in there to make positions back up from pit and pit strategy if you're a bit further down. So I think you got to bear that in mind with a final fix. You could, of course, make a final fix with Liam Lawson based at the track with a dodgy phone signal in Monaco, but we won't go into that.
Taking a quick look through the post FP3 point assessments here, Russell and Antonelli basically a coin flip at the top. Ryder suspects that Antonelli will outscore the two McLarens, so unlikely that we'll need final fix, but one bogey lap in qualifying, we could see it. And then moving down here, really from Hadjar all the way down to Albon, it's just a matter of 4 points. And when you do thousands of simulations, it's really just a rounding difference between what these guys end up with. So not a huge difference between them all. And then I would avoid any Cadillac or Aston Martin this week. Aston Martin's still struggling with pace. They could retire at any moment. And then Bottas found himself in the gravel in FP3 with a real boogeyman in his car that Perez said, hey, should I be worried about that too? And they said, no, don't worry about it. It'll be fine. And the commentary team begged to differ. Looked like something that could afflict them all weekend.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, going back to Bradley's point in the comment, he's put Russell and Antonelli. I think you said it immensely. It's a coin flip between the two. For me, Russell has actually looked the more comfortable this weekend. Kimi looks a little bit rattled, not being able to get his runs, and obviously Kimi comes across like on the radio anyway. He's very much like Isaac and a bit like Max on that. He's quite short on the radio with Bono a lot of times, so I wouldn't read too much into his radio messages. He's young, he's impulsive, he gets quite frustrated. We heard it in Calendar quite a bit as well. So I don't think that's anything to worry about. But I do feel that George needs a big weekend. I feel he knows he needs a big weekend. 100th, obviously, Mercedes race for him as well. He's out to make a statement. He wants to make sure it's not a runaway. So it feels like George is more on it than what Kimi currently is. But I think any bad lap could potentially put either Mercedes on pole. And then you've got race strategy then, haven't you? Because if you've got two Mercedes, 1 and 2, for example, the front car is going to choose a strategy, which then leaves the second car open to an undercut or something else going on. So I think that could also play a factor in all of this as well.
The betting lines agree. Mercedes 1-2. They like McLaren as favorites over Ferrari. There's a bit of a gap here between Piastri and Leclerc. So it feels like a real gap and not just rounding error there. So good news for those of us thinking about moving into McLaren. Looking over at some of our member lineups, I imagine this is going to grow based on all the generosity we've seen in the first 20 minutes here. This is our friend Rick looking at a 4A light lineup. These are our big decisions, right? So Hadjar versus Gasly, Lawson versus Colapinto, and then Lindblad versus Bortoleto. Who, if I had to pick this week, I would say Bortoleto over Lindblad. Lindblad's slightly better on points. Probably going to lose some value, and then we'll gain value next time out in Austria. Bortoleto, a little more of a DNF risk, but contender for points. I think they're quite good. Lawson versus Colapinto, for me, is a toss-up. I think they're both good for 0.6 million, even though Lawson's target's better. And then Gasly versus Hadjar. If you're desperate for the cash, Rick's not at 12.8 million. So I'd say maybe Hadjar with a differential if Gasly's struggling. And I would split up Gasly and Colapinto, because if Alpine have a problem, you don't want them both.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Race Maven's got 3 teams in multiple leagues. What do we got? All Mercedes Ferrari builds. And then I'm actually quite happy with all these. The only thing I would look at, though, is this Bottas play down here, because I think he's a lock to lose value this week.
Yeah, who else are you bringing instead of Bottas?
99% there. What could you bring in for Bottas? I think you would have to do a few moves here, Race Maven, to make that work. Bring Colapinto down so that you free up enough budget for Lindblad.
Yeah.
And then
I've used Lindblad as a bit of a filler in one of mine, to be honest, because I had to make a move on it. So without sort of giving away my lineup too early, I've had to use him more of a bringing him in, because actually it allowed me to do a couple of other moves. So I think that's kind of where I am with Arvid in terms of bringing him in. I think that the Racing Bulls is okay around here. I think it's a bit of a muchness in that middle, along with Audi. So yeah.
Oh boy, we got a lot to unpack in these last few minutes here. Are there any other teams? No teams.
No, right. Let's hit some questions then, shall we? Let's unpack some of this lot.
What's going on with Gasly budget? He could go up 0.8 million in the off week. We could also not. And that Alpine is not looking super great around Spain so far. So now the question is, do you believe that F1 Fantasy is going to adjust that price up 0.8 million? If you do, I would bring in Gasly. If you don't, I'm not seeing enough to bring him in. Hadjar's better. Spreading that budget around for bringing in McLaren as a constructor is better. I don't totally buy Gasly going up 0.8 million. So for me, I'm less than 50-50. I'm bringing him in right now. But you could convince me in the last 35 minutes.
Will they be able to tell who had Pierre in before this weekend? Do you think?
I would say yes, but how would you get them that money back? Because
And that's what I'm saying. How do you do this?
the price gains are tied to the assets, and the assets move each week. So if I brought in gasoline now, I would have the assets. So if they added value to it, we'd all get that. And so that's the $1 million question.
Yeah, I think they're going to look at a point system rather than a budget one. It kind of makes it easier and probably a bit fairer, because otherwise you got the potential where you say people have brought him in this weekend just to get a price game, which makes you wonder if they're going to just correct the points and go with that and use that as a fail safe. Yeah, Limblad or Lawson, interesting one. I think they're both there or thereabouts. Lawson's probably more due to go up than what Limblad is, to be honest. So I'll probably go for Lawson based on performances and what he's going to gain in terms of price increase. So on that point of view, I think they're going to be by each other. But yeah, George or Kimi, get a coin out. Basically, I don't think there's. Yeah, I mean, as we said, Kimi was impeded. George has been looking more settled, but then Kimi, as we've seen before, has got the potential to just put it on pole and then get the Mercedes in terms of strategy and go that side of things. So I do think it's going to be a coin toss between those two. But I wouldn't rule out McLaren causing an upset somewhere as well. They've looked on it and they've looked quite close. I mean, Lando yesterday didn't even have a purple sector when he set the fastest time. So I think there's more to come from that McLaren as well. So bear that one in mind as well. McLaren or Ferrari? That's a good question. That's a good question. I think McLaren will get you more points, but obviously if you choose Ferrari, it's going to potentially hinder your budget and what you can do with your team, isn't it? So you got to use a transfer and look at the budget. I think Ferrari are going to be best of the rest alongside better than Red Bull and everybody else. So I think you'll still get some good points. But I think that McLaren will get you a lot of points, but it's what you have to trade off to bring McLaren in as your second constructor, isn't it, really? From what when I was sort of going through my team, it was more of a case of what I'd have to compromise on to bring in McLaren in, to be honest.
Which Mercedes are you running this week? Kimi at 83%, George at 17%. I would say start Kimi. If there's a shocker one way or another, you have final fix. Save that extra. How much do you need? 3.2 million for Russell. I think some of us did keep about 3-4 million in the bank last week, so that's possible.
Limblad or Behrman? I'll probably go Limblad this weekend, but Behrman and Haas look well off the pace. They've looked nowhere.
Behrman spent all of FP3 complaining. I think Haas is nowhere to be found. I had Ocon on some of my early teams. I'm avoiding Ocon altogether.
Yeah, I've not seen anything that makes me want to pick Haas this weekend at all currently.
All right, let's see. I've posted my team, but I'm going to tell you, when I show you this team, I have 30 minutes to change it if things get crazy. So
I think I've posted mine as well if it's worked, but if not,
I'm going to call it locked in-ish. I'm not going for Gasly. I'm going for McLaren. Now, I want to see updated betting lines on retirements. Want to see what some of the other top minds in the game post, like our friend Tom, who was on last weekend, like last year's P1 winner Gavin, like Andrew. So I want to make sure there's no points I'm missing here, but basically keeping the core of Antonelli, Lawson, Colapinto to hopefully go up in price. Hulkenberg is 0.2 million off the price floor with single-digit targets to go up this week. So I think he's a must-have across all of your teams. Gabby competing for the top 10 this week, decent price gain targets. And this allows me to carry a transfer into Austria too. So if I get this totally wrong, I can pivot for the Red Bull ring without too much of a penalty. Now I'm staking my week on McLaren reliability. Is the pace for real? Can they survive the race tomorrow? If I hear of any problems with McLaren in the garage heading up into Q1, you're going to see me pivot right back to Ferrari.
You could do mine if you want. I think mine's up as well.
Terry, let's see. What madness have you cooked up for this week, Terry?
Oh, BAs.
Oh, very similar. So you've gone from McLaren to Limblad on your team as the token Racing Bulls. Talk me through your choice to bring in McLaren.
To be honest, I had to bring Limblad to afford McLaren. So that was my two moves when I made it. So I haven't used any -10 or anything like that. So this is just two straight moves. I had the core, like you've got Antonelli, Borsaletto, Hulkenberg, Colapinto already in there, to be honest. So for me, it was two straight moves. I could take out, I can't remember who I had before, but I could take out somebody to bring Limblad, and then that left me enough budget to move up from Ferrari to McLaren as well. So it kind of felt like a really easy move in terms of getting to where I wanted it to get to without compromising too much. So I did look at the Gasly thing, but as I said before, I would have had to have taken a -10, not have McLaren potentially do a lot of moving around. It kind of felt for me it was too risky to try and go off on a maybe rather than a dead certainty. If I knew there was something in the rules where there's a certainty to go up, I would have considered it. But I think this is the safest one. It's quite similar to yours as well.
Yeah, we're back on the same page, and we didn't talk about this before too, so quite interesting.
We don't, ironically. People must think we must sit here and compare, but we don't, to be honest. I keep my team 3 a secret from Adam because he's doing really well at the moment. So,
yes, for me, this is a big week. I can get back inside the top 500. I'm just outside it right now. So, want to make a big splash with my budget to see if I can do something that other teams can't do. That's at least part of my logic for this team. But also, if you have multiple lineups, why not put McLaren on one and Gas on the other? Split your strategy, see which one prevails this week.
I've actually got Lando on as a 2x on one of my other teams. Just to throw a spanner in the works. So that's my team 1, but my team 3, which is doing really well, has actually got Lando as a 2x in there. So that's gonna be interesting to see how that plays out. That's a bit of a gamble with that one, especially where it is in the league at the moment. But we'll give it a whirl, see what goes on.
These are the moves that take you to the top, though, Terry. You gotta
absolutely
try it.
One way or the other. Right. Oh my word! Question. Colapinto over Lindblad. I would take Franco.
Yeah. For one last week. I think what's going to happen is there's going to be an inflection. If we go back to the budget builder here, you see Franco, the 25 is going to drop off, and the 0 is going to stay. For Lindblad, the -16 is going to drop off. I think he goes to 18 when if the Gasly move stays for Monaco. And so you're going to see an inverse relationship here where Lindblad jumps to the top, Colapinto goes down. So one last week, Colapinto, then Lindblad, then switch them for Austria.
Cool. A lot of questions, Adam, especially around, there's some big questions in there. We need to have a look at some of these.
We've got over 300 friends in the chat, so make sure you hit the like button. I haven't asked for that in at least 20 minutes now.
So changing a 2x driver costs as a -20. It doesn't cost anything if they're already in your team. So if they're already in your team and you move your 2x, you can do that all the way up until qualifying starts. Obviously, you can't do it afterwards. If they're not in your team, then the normal rules apply. It will say you've made an additional change. Don't worry. It always says that. If you move your 2x driver, it will come up as you're making 3 changes, for example. You're not in terms of the transfers. You're only making 2. So your 2x can be moved about without any cost. There's no cost involved in moving your 2x. But obviously, if you're bringing a driver in that's outside your transfer, then yes, it does cost from that point of view. But you don't get penalised for moving your 2x at all.
Ocon to Hulk for a -10. No.
No.
In general, whenever you have I'll say this probably every live show. If you have a single tier B driver and you're moving to another single tier B driver, it's never worth the -10 because you know Murphy's Law. In that case, Hulkenberg's going to retire. Ocon's going to find his way into the points, and you're going to really be kicking yourself for it. So never in tier B.
What's that one from Alexandria? I've got 3 transfers this weekend. I'm debating between Antonelli, Hulkenberg, Lawson, Colapinto, and Bortoleto, Mercedes, McLaren, or Antonetti, Hulkenberg, Lawson, Lindblad, Bortoleto, Mercedes, McLaren.
So we got Lindblad versus Colapinto. I think that's the only difference. And I'm sticking with the answer we had earlier of Colapinto over Lindblad this week and then flip them next week.
Yeah, I wouldn't take a -10 for Franco. I just saw that one pop up. I don't think it's worth. I don't think Alpine's performance is worth a -10, to be honest. Looking at it, the only time I consider that if you're about to lose budget, maybe potentially.
Monterey Legend says Lindblad or Hulkenberg depends. If you want the points, I trust Lindblad better for the points. If you want cost cap safety, I'd say Hulkenberg. He can only drop 0.2 million no matter what happens, and he has a decent chance of going up. Lindblad has a better chance of going up in the next race. Is double Alpine too risky? I would prefer not to have it, but also their form's been good enough. Their reliability's been good enough. They're just sitting here in this no man's land outside the top 10. So I don't think they're both going to record a ton of points. I think you'd just be banking on Colapinto crawling over his price gain thresholds, Gasly getting a miracle next week when the depth sticks the game.
Double Red Bull and double Audi too dangerous with McLaren and Mercedes. I think Audi is it's like a pick and mix, isn't it? You don't know what you're going to get. We saw last weekend that we thought there was problems. In the end, they were fine. There was all sorts going on. I think Audi is just one of those with no customer teams. I think it shows with their engines. I feel they've got a half decent car around here, but whether or not it's going to survive a race always seems to be a big question you've got. And I don't think you can choose which driver it's going to be on either. It kind of feels like if you've got both, you're either going to get lucky or one of them might get hit. And whichever one that is, they both have bad luck with engine stuff this weekend. So, yeah, Racing Bulls, that Ford engine has moments. We saw Lawson struggling last week to get going. We saw, obviously, Isaac had problems. I know that the FIA say it's the most powerful. I know that Red Bull say it's not. But we know that there's gremlins in that Red Bull powertrain engine at times. So, again, it's one of those where it could affect them. It could be a race where they're going. I've talked about the hot weather. We don't really know how they're going to react to hot weather and extreme heat. We haven't really had it at all this season so far. So that's going to be a new thing for the teams. And the teams don't really know. If you remember back to Bahrain in pre-season testing, it was still quite cold. It was still nowhere near the temperatures we're seeing in Barcelona currently. So again, it's going to be a new experience for the teams and the engines. And I always say running an engine around a test track at lowest setting is a lot different to running it flat out during the race.
And when I sort the sims by DNF percentage, you can see it's only Aston Martin and then a little bit of Cadillac that are about 25% or higher risk. Everybody else is 80-20 or better to finish, including the McLarens, where we're worried about reliability. This is 90-10. They're going to finish the race. So, yeah, there's a chance, but it's not like a sure thing they're limping their way through on Sunday. So this is what gives me some confidence that McLaren can make this work.
When should we start seeing full 4A builds? I've seen some 4A builds with a high budget. Have you seen many, Adam? I've not seen a lot, to be honest.
High budgets?
Yeah, for 4A builds. There's been a couple floating about online, hasn't there? But
yeah,
not great ones.
For a proper 4A build,
yeah,
you have to sacrifice a lot at the top. You'd have to have Leclerc, Piastri sort of thing as your drivers, and then Red Bull, Ferrari as your constructors. Well, a lot of us are talking about this week is the 4A Light, where you can get the likes of Hadjar or Pierre Gasly, the more expensive Tier B drivers. So we've been calling it the 4A Light. That's been a bit in vogue, but I don't think anyone's quite at a proper 4A team yet.
Leclerc or Piastri? I would go Piastri this weekend to answer that one.
Same. Rick, you've been patiently waiting on our opinion on Lindblad versus Bortoleto. I have Bortoleto on my team because it saves the transfer. Yep. I think Bortoleto has a safer price situation this week. I like Lindblad better for points this week and better long-term for price. So for me, I'm making a little sacrifice this week to save the transfer and then get into Lindblad next week. If you have one of them on your team already, I would stick with the date you came with.
Yeah, I mean, I only brought Lindblad in because I said it allowed me to move into McLaren, which is the reason. If I'd stayed, obviously, with that Mercedes Ferrari build, I could have actually not had Lindblad in, but I wanted to get some of those McLaren points, to be honest, when I haven't got McLaren anywhere else. I kind of feel they're going to be above Ferrari. So I felt the move to bring Lindblad in would give me more points with McLaren than what it would have done staying with Ferrari. So that's the reason behind it. And like Adam, I already had Gabby in there anyway, so it was kind of like, just leave him in there and not make any additional -10s on it.
There's a question in the chat about McLaren over Ferrari for a -10. You can see in the sims here, the difference is 9. So almost exactly. So really it's a matter of, do you believe in McLaren's pace, or do you believe that Ferrari can get it back on Sunday? That's a coin flip one way or another. I believe in McLaren, but basically it's only a 9-point difference for a 10-point sacrifice. So truly your call. I would say give it a shot. But
yeah,
I think the minority with that.
I think for me, like we said earlier with Ferrari, I'm not seeing enough from them. Their race starts have been hindered recently. We saw that in Monaco especially. So I think that advantage has been eroded with what changes the team in the FIA have done with regards to race starts. So I'm not seeing that. And I don't see them having the pace and the turbo and the other parts to treble that Mercedes and McLaren and what they've got set up. So I think for me, they might get lucky. They might get in between some of these teams. So you might see them kind of, towards the edge of the podium, potentially getting in between McLarens, maybe something like that. But I don't see them challenging for a win from that point of view. So I think it's going to be those 4 drivers we got with those Mercedes drivers and those McLaren drivers. And then we're going to see Lewis and Charles into the mix. Like I say, we might get it where someone disrupts it a bit on a good lap or a lap deletion somewhere, but I'm not too convinced around Barcelona. You think that final turn, we got 2 straight modes here and boost as well. It kind of feels like you could get them into turn 1 quite easily and get that pace back.
I've switched the simulation to C, which is the one I personally think is going to happen, which is Gasly doesn't get 0.8 million next week. but this week's prices will be adjusted based on his new points. So I think Gasly will have lower targets post-race that could get fixed, but they're not just going to add 0.8 million to Gasly's price. That's my opinion on how it shakes out. So the simulation you see on screen is based on my take.
Would you go Hadja over Colapinto for a free transfer? I probably would. I've been impressed with Isaac. I think Isaac's performing well.
Matt's threatening violence if he doesn't get his question answered. Matt, put it back in the chat. We'll take care of you.
Matt, what was your question?
Let us know. We get to rambling, and then before you know it, we've missed some good questions.
You gotta put your question back in, Matt. Come on. Do the rant and put the question on the bottom so we can see it.
Hurry before I get on another tangent.
Yeah, put on there. We can't scroll all the way back up.
Oh, a different Matt coming in the mix here. McLaren and Colapinto or Ferrari and Hadjar?
Matt first. Don't answer that, Matt first.
Oh, fine. McLaren and Colapinto. That's my 2-second version.
I'm scrolling to see if I can find Matt's now. Oh, what do you think about McLaren, Mercedes, Antonelli, Colapinto, Lindblad, Hulkenberg, and Bortoletto? Should I take a -10 to go to something else?
No, I think that's quite good. It's basically a hybrid of our two teams, Terry.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you've got McLaren, Mercedes, so you've got a nice mix there. Antonelli's going to be in amongst it, I feel. Colapinto, Lindblad, Hulkenberg, and Bortoletto are all good for price increases. Matt, to answer your question, no, I think you'll be fine.
Stick with it. No -10.
That should be a new thing. If you're going to do a rant, put the question at the bottom of your rant so we can read it.
Absolutely. Gezelig says, Adam, who was the guy last week? That was Pot Pan Man Tom. I want to check with his lineup as well. Funny you ask. I've been talking to him for the last half hour, and he is currently undecided. He's weighing in pretty heavily between the lineup I showed you earlier with McLaren and sticking with Ferrari, bringing in Gasly, and hope the game blesses him with 0.8 million in the off week. But he, as of right this second, does not have a team. But I will update you as he sets his lineup. He is DMing me with the little 3 dots that he's typing as we speak. So if there's more to come here, I'll break that news. Lannister, you've been asking a lot about getting in Gasly. It depends if you think he's going to get the 0.8 million. I think he's not, so I've sat him out. Lots of great players think he will, or it's at least worth the shot because he'll have lower price gain targets in the coming weeks. So they are. It's just a matter of whether or not you think the game will do it, which is truly a coin flip right now.
So we've got is Antonelli, 2 times Leclerc, Bortoletto, Hulkenberg, Lawson, Mercedes, and Racing Bulls any good? I probably worry about the Racing Bull side of it and leaving too much on the table with constructors on that one. For -10, I don't know what you had before, to be honest, but I think you might need to make some moves to get another good constructor in there rather than running Antonelli and Leclerc. I would put your 2x on Antonelli, free up your money for Leclerc, and then move your Racing Bulls up to a decent constructor, probably a Ferrari from that, or maybe a McLaren, depending on your budget. Would be what I would do with that one.
I agree. A lot of coverage on Racing Bulls because you have the constructor and Lawson. God forbid Lawson gets collected into turn 1. Yeah, that's a lot of minus points. Leclerc not that strong this week, and if I'm reading your post right, it would be 2x on Leclerc. I would slide him out. Yeah,
definitely.
Race Maven, what's everybody's budget? I'm at 113 even.
I don't know what I'm at.
You are not far behind.
I was to say I'm quite close to Adam, to be honest.
I think you're like 112.6 or something like that. Yeah, a lot of people forgot to set their lineups last week and it ended up being better for them than if they actually changed things. So congrats to those of you that slept through the deadline. Will is also at 113 even.
There you go. 113 seems to be around the mark, doesn't it, currently at the moment for everybody? There's quite a lot around that, isn't there?
Oh, Fussell at 114.4. Yeah, you're awfully close to those 4A lineups. I think somewhere around high 114s, low 115s. You can crawl into the entry level ones. Oh, is it worth a -10 to swap Perez for Hulk? I saw this earlier. No. Keep him. Unless we hear in the next few minutes that Perez has some sort of problem that holds him back from qualifying, I'm fine keeping that in. And chat, do let us know if you're hearing any chatter about drivers that are struggling to fire up their cars. It seems like there's one of these every single qualifying week. So do keep us posted.
Definitely. Team didn't change because of a bug in the website. To be honest, that's why I locked mine in before we come on the live stream. We've had it before now where we've had problems trying to lock it in where the game's had a bug and it's locked you out, or you go to log in and suddenly your fantasy team isn't there. I've had that a few times as well. So I tend to try to lock mine in before, and unless something major happens, don't do a lot to it. We had it before with obviously Hulkenberg going out on the way to the grid, didn't we? On the one on the sprint race or something. So I think that's the only time we've probably changed it live on air. But I tend to not do too much on it whilst we're near a deadline. Michael, what's he got? He's got pre-show on. Oh, he jinxed it now, hasn't he? He said the fatal words. There's nothing going on. Michael, don't do that.
That's okay. Hey, listen, he's multitasking us and the broadcast, so I'm glad that we hold rank against F1 TV or however you watch it.
Absolutely.
That's a good question, Mike. Do you watch on Apple TV or F1 TV?
I've heard some really good things about Callum on F1 TV.
He's been fantastic.
Yeah, I obviously can't get it here in the UK, so it's really annoying. But I've been hearing some really. I love listening to Callum anyway. I did an evening with Callum when his book came out. Really insightful guy, really great to listen to. So I imagine he's really good on broadcast. But there's some things about the Apple TV deal and F1 TV which us here in the UK, unless you start VPNing and doing all those bits, it's not available, which is a bit of a shame, really, because I would probably switch sometimes if I'm honest.
Yeah, Callum had some really good insight on some of these overnight changes. We talked about the word soup that McLaren put out after making some reliability improvements to the cars last night. He made some sense of that. Geselig, he is typing right now. I think he is leaning toward keeping Ferrari and bringing in Gasly. And to be fair, Tom is right way more often than he's wrong. Multiple top 1,000 finishes. Higher ranked than Terry or I right now. I think he's in the 200s, 300s in the local league. So
it's interesting to see what coverage people watch on, isn't it?
Yeah. Bortoleto or Lindblad? Bortoleto this week, Lindblad next week.
Yeah.
Gasly or Hadjar? I guess Gasly. Unless you had Hadjar last week and you're using a transfer and taking a -10. If those are your options, I'd say at least take the shot on Gasly.
Can we just have a shout out to that setup of FanAmp on the iPad, Le Mans on the TV, Quali on the laptop? I mean, I've got some setup going on in the shed, but that's some serious setup going on there as well. I bow to that restriction, and the fact you can get all those devices, because normally, the kids take a TV or something somewhere. Worst team, I would stick a couple of Cadillacs, a couple of Aston Martins in there.
So much Astons and Cadillacs. Yep.
Yeah. You're pretty much there then, and then take your pick. Probably this weekend a couple of Hasses for good measure as well.
Slap the 2XM Bottas. I don't see him finishing the race.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good call from Mike in the chat. Our old friend Rob is locked in his team. He's gone Gasly Ferrari as well. So Terry and I might be in the minority this week running McLaren.
It's going to go one way, mate. One way or the other.
One way or another. Absolutely.
Yeah. You got to have a different sometimes, haven't you?
Bottas to Bortoleto for a -10. I got to stay true to my guts here. Keep Bottas. Hope he finishes the race because Bortoleto's safer, but not so obviously safer. He's worth the -10.
Yeah.
Matthew's locked in his team and gone McLaren. Fantastic. Starting to get some momentum to McLaren.
I think people are seeing the value of Adam. I think that it might be a bit of a sneaky one.
Can someone please tell me if Lando Norris can't get the car fired up in the next 10 minutes? Because I'm not above switching it back.
Absolutely.
Let's see.
And remember, you don't burn a transfer switching back, do you? So we need to make some people on that one. So
thank goodness for net transfers. Yeah. Absolutely.
So nowadays you don't lose that. So if you have Ferrari and swap to McLaren and you swap back, you don't actually burn a -10 to do that like you used to. So just bear that in mind. Obviously, I wouldn't recommend too many changes with 10 minutes to go. But even so, it's worth remembering that when something happens.
Swap Colapinto for Hadjar. It's tricky. Hadjar's in better form this week. And it also depends on what the price change is based off of. If Hadjar's score goes down and then the price changes reflect off of that, it's going to bring the odds back into Franco's favor. I would say hold the transfer and keep Colapinto. See what happens with these changes.
Can you imagine that gets overturned again from Gasly and all these people brought him in? That's going to cause absolute chaos.
Yep, exactly. Now he's a decent shout for price gains if everything stays, but I don't have a good feeling that 0.8 million is just going to get dropped on teams that have
Nah,
brought him in this week.
it feels they'll do a different way. Well, it's Alexandra locked in. Antonelli, Tom 2, Hadja Lawson, Hulkenberg, Bortoletto, Mercedes, McLaren as well. We've got a bit of McLaren movement going on.
Welcome to the party, Alexandra.
Yeah, it's going to go one way or the other. We're either going to be celebrating or crying.
The dark side is right here on the fantasy formula.
The papaya side.
Hulk or Valtteri? Hulk. Colapinto to Lawson for a -10? No, thank you.
No.
My only exception for the tier B -10 is if the driver you're moving into can get a 0.6 million gain no matter what happens, and the driver you're moving out has no chance of getting any price gain. So it's -10 for whatever $1.2 million swing between those two drivers. That's when it becomes worth it, but nothing else. Sahil wants to know, thinking of changing from Antonelli, Ocon, Perez, Bottas, Bortoletto, Mercedes, Ferrari to Antonelli, Lawson, Lindblad, Hulk, Colapinto, Mercedes, Ferrari. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
No Ocon, no Perez.
Yeah.
I'd
say that's a sensible move. Yeah.
And with a -10, a -10 when you're moving multiple drivers around to get right is okay. A 1-for-1 swap with a -10, I find, isn't worth it.
I don't often agree with Montoya at times, but I think he's right with Ferrari's deck. There's an outward wash going on with that floor, which doesn't look too great on the Ferrari tires I saw yesterday when they were coming off.
They changed a lot this weekend. 8 upgrades. Yeah. So I wonder what sticks, what actually makes it on the car by tomorrow.
Well, they changed a lot. They changed the front wing. So you would have seen, I don't know if you've seen the pictures, they got little winglets on them. They didn't have those before. And they've also changed the edge of the floor as well, where they're trying to move the wash as well. It's a really complicated floor they put on from a really basic one they had before. And again, it's one of those where it's going to go one of two ways, isn't it, to be honest? But it kind of feels like at the moment it's a classic Ferrari potentially changing too much and not getting it quite right. We've seen that before now.
It could totally happen. Ooh, great question in the chat. Alonso, Perez, Bottas out for Lawson, Lindblad, Hulkenberg for a -10. That's the kind of -10 I would take.
Yeah.
Wholesale price losers out, wholesale price gainers, and safety in. Yeah. That's where the -10 happens. Let's see. Wise Man Austin says Hulk, Antonelli, Bottas, Colapinto, Bortoletto, Ferrari, Mercedes, 4.1 million in the bank. Is that good? If you can get Valtteri out for Bortoletto, you have the money for it. As long as that's not a -10, I would do that. Oh, you have Bortoletto already.
He's got Bortoletto, I was going to say.
Change that. Make it Lindblad. You got the money for that too. Yeah. I'd say Lindblad for Valtteri, and then the team's perfect. But don't take a -10 for it. If that's with your transfers, keep it.
I think that was close to what I had, where Lindblad was kind of in there over in the Cadillac, so I went with that when I looked at it. Don't use Limitless today. No, it's not a track to use Limitless. If you've got that, don't.
I have an official posted lineup from Tom. Let's bring this. He's a wonderful follow, by the way, if people don't follow him already.
Oh, he's gone against us?
He has gone against us, sort of. So he's got double Audi, Lawson, like we do, Antonelli at the top of Mercedes. The only difference here, he's got Gasly where we have Colapinto, so we split the Alpines, and then Ferrari versus McLaren. So subtle changes. He's hoping that 0.8 million just gets dropped on the top for Pierre.
Yeah. We're personally choosing McLaren over Ferrari. We seem to be in the minority, if I'm honest, from what we're seeing. But hey, someone's got to be in the minority. I'm quite comfortable with it.
What we need, we need a fastest pit stop from McLaren to really make it work. They've gotten 5 points for their fastest pit stop the last few weeks. That's something not a lot of teams have done. So that also helped.
I think people confusing the McLaren reliability with the car they've got. If you look at the actual reliability, when the car's going, they've been in amongst it. Their issue's been these gremlins in the car to not getting the car going. Actually, when they've raced and they've actually they've been podiums and in amongst it. So I think there's a bit of like you said earlier with the reliability, it's kind of masking how good the McLaren actually is because it's a good car. They just haven't been able to sort those gremlins out and get into it. So yeah.
Matt and Tommy had a very interesting poll last night, which is a fun omen. They both made a bold prediction about McLaren. Matt said no reliability issues for Norris. Tommy said 2 teammates are going to collide. Now he said that generally about the grid, but it was over a picture of McLaren. So I wonder if that's some foreshadowing on what he meant by that.
I don't know. We Mercedes and Barcelona. I mean, there's history there, isn't there? Let's be honest about it.
Would you swap Antonelli for Russell if you can? For me, with a team that's running really high up in the rankings, I'm going to keep Antonelli and have the money left over for final fixture George if I need it. If you're behind in your leagues, everybody's running Antonelli. I would take the differential with Russell because he is looking quite good, but it's not the obvious move for most teams.
Yeah, exactly.
5-minute warning. Thank you, Greg. Lock your lineups because who knows what gremlins will wait for you in the app if you don't.
FPL Foxy 86 had the Monaco limitless GP. Ouch. I feel for you. I don't think there's much I can say on that.
Here's some breaking news. I didn't lock in my lineup. I took a picture and left it there.
Oh, my word.
Boy, would that have been a shocker.
That would have been a shocker. Where's Kimmy's head at? He's had 2 easy wins with a competition dropped out. Will he overdrive this weekend? I feel that when Kimmy is under pressure, as we saw in Canada, he is prone to mistakes still. I mean, you've got to remember, he's 19 years old. He's bound to still make mistakes. I feel that if George can get kind of under his skin a bit, we might see what happened in Canada. You've got to wonder if George didn't have that engine problem in Canada, whether or not Kimmy would have actually won the race and got past him. So I feel that George was in control. Kimmy was taking it to him at going off track quite a bit. Potentially the same might happen here in Barcelona. So I can see what you're saying. I think that Kimmy's grown up a lot this season, but I also feel that when you're that young, there's a potential where there's going to be a drop in form somewhere. It's just a case of where that comes in a Formula One season and how long that lasts for. We saw, Oscar drop off like a stone last season, so it is possible. So I wouldn't rule anything out. So I would say keep your eye on it because it might happen.
Thank goodness for Greg's 5-minute warning. My team is now locked in. The one I told you I was going to lock in. I didn't have any last minute shenanigans. Big weekend for sports. World Cup is firing up. We have the NBA Finals picking up again tonight, and of course the Barcelona-Catalunya Grand Prix. So lots of fun stuff to watch here.
Not the Spanish Grand Prix.
Yes, we got two Spanish Grand Prix this year, so we have to classify. Hulkenberg or Lindblad? Hulkenberg. Super safe, no matter what happens. Yeah, special thanks again to Race Maven.
Yeah,
lots of new members thanks to your generosity. So big thank you. We've got 3 minutes left, so lightning round. If you have any questions, get them in now. Ooh, F1 Enjoyer, Antonelli, Colapinto, Lindblad, Bortoleto, Perez, Ferrari, McLaren, 111. You have 3 transfers left. I would get Perez out.
Yeah.
What can you do with Perez? Do you have Lindblad already? You do have Lindblad already. Bortoleto?
Hulkenberg.
You have, Hulkenberg. Thank you, Terry.
Yeah, Hulkenberg. And that might even leave you some to maybe go to Ferrari, McLaren if you wanted to go about them. Potentially, depends on what your budget is. So you might be able to do that as well.
Yes, McLaren. I like Mercedes above all. This is a Ferrari McLaren team. So if you can get Ferrari into Mercedes, great. If you can get McLaren into Mercedes, I would rather have Mercedes.
Ferrari, Mercedes, yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
Price prediction for Hadjar after Barcelona. I think it depends on what he scores. Let's say he scores 13 points, which is exactly his target for 0.6 million. I think they're going to make Barcelona scores based off of the corrected scores. So you'll see a price change. It'll be based off of the Monaco scores. Then the game will go down, and then it will come back and rewrite Barcelona price changes based off of the updated Monaco scores, assuming that there are no other challenges that have been processed to change the outcome. And this could stretch on for weeks. So they may process, assuming just Gasly changes, and then there's more shenanigans, and then there's another change later. So the plot thickens.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if they're waiting for the appeal window to shut. So they only have to do it once, if I'm honest.
Is Ferrari faster than McLaren in qualifying?
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either.
No, I don't think so.
It all comes down to a single lap. If you don't put it together, anything could happen. But if everybody does what they need to do.
Yeah. I would say on pace, no. I would say, is Ferrari faster? They might be over a lap if it goes their way. But I think on raw pace, no. I think McLaren are faster than Ferrari this weekend.
We're down to the final minute, so it's time for an extra special thank you to each and every one of you for tuning in. We have a very special guest coming on the show in the coming weeks, so make sure you keep an eye out for that. Terry and I will be back to celebrate or cry over the fate of McLaren, and I hope you're all there to join us too. So until then, enjoy the weekend and good luck.
See you later. Thank you, everyone.